Imagine yourself seriously ill or injured, but with no way to get to a doctor. Well, that's a fact of life for many rural Alaska communities. Now one, King Cove, is trying to do something about it. People there want to build a road to a nearby airport. But as Kirk Chason tells us, the federal government is against it.
King Cove resident Lydia Mack blames the loss of her husband on the lack of timely medical care.
He got real sick and, well, it was last week in February. And there was a whole week that we tried to get him out and couldn't. The weather was so bad.
But her husband is not Mack's only weather-related loss. Her infant son also died waiting for treatment.
We only had him for a month and 3 weeks, and we lost him. But he got very sick, and just overnight seemed like he was very sick, and high fever and everything, and dehydrated. And we couldn't get him out of here. And there was nothing they could do. So, but we tried to get him out on the boat, and we were down here, like I said, at the mess hall, the cookhouse that was in, waiting for the boat to get out of the lagoon. Now it's the boat harbor, but when they finally did, it was too late. He died right in my arms. So.
Hold real still, good boy.
King Cove has only a small medical clinic. There are treatments a patient can get in Anchorage they cannot get here.
They have the specialists, they have the cardiology team, they have the emergency team that's prepared and qualified to handle any extent, any degree of injury and cardiac event. And here we're a primary care clinic. We're specialists in the day-to-day management of chronic and acute healthcare concerns.
If people here need serious medical care, they have to cross Cold Bay by boat or plane. From there, they transfer to a larger plane that takes them to Anchorage. But in bad weather, the trip from King Cove to Cold Bay can be dangerous, if not impossible. Marvin Hoff's wife was a nurse who died in a plane crash on the way to Cold Bay years ago.
It was the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life.
King Cove residents want to build a road around the bay to the airport 30 miles away. But the road would have to cut through the Eisenbeck National Wildlife Refuge, a staging area for migratory birds. The U.S. Interior Department first wants to study other possible ways to bridge the gap between King Cove and Cold Bay. Until then, Hoff hopes the weather is good if either of his two granddaughters ever needs major medical care in a hurry.
But something was to happen to them and they were to get sick, and if they couldn't get out of town, that would probably kill me.
The U.S. Interior Department says federal law requires a study into other possible ways to solve the problem.
If one is really concerned about health and safety of King Cove residents, it seems as if you'd want to take measures that could most immediately address that concern. Those measures would not be a road. Those measures would include improving the clinic, having telemedicine capabilities, having a physician or nurse practitioner at the clinic, and also having some kind of emergency marine transportation link that could operate right away.
King Cove residents insist marine transportation, basically a boat ambulance to the Cold Bay Airport, will not work. They say the water is often too rough for sick or injured people to get on and off the boat. Stanley Mack once had to rescue a woman who fell in.
As she was going down the ladder off the pull rail of the boat, she slipped and fell and hit her shoulder and on the side of the boat and fell overboard and went underwater. So without thinking, I jumped in and rescued her.
Annette Kuzakin knows what it's like to crawl across that ladder in rough weather after a pressure cooker in her kitchen exploded and left her scalded last year. She had to climb the ladder while suffering from severe burns.
I was afraid I was going to blow over in the water. But they were watching me from the top and grabbed me as soon as I got up there. Ambulance were there waiting for me when I got there.
11-year-old Arlene Newman has also made the boat trip after waiting for 3 days with a broken arm several years ago.
But I remember laying in my mom's bed watching TV crying. Scary because my dad was carrying me up the ladder.
By then, Arlene had been sick for 4 days and not eating, and she had lost a lot of weight and just not coherent and not talking, nothing. And I wrapped her in a blanket when we took her over on the boat, and when AJ handed her over, because we had to climb the dock with her, when he handed her over, she was just lifeless. Her other arm had fallen out of the blanket and it just dropped, and she looked like she was dead.
The marine concept isn't going to work. I mean, if you can't get a 150-foot, 200-foot crab boat from here to Cove Bay, the marine concept is not going to work.
Last week, the U.S. Senate voted to allow the King Cove Native Corporation to exchange 664 acres of native land for 65 acres of refuge land, room for the road to cut through the edge of the refuge. President Clinton has threatened to veto the bill. But across the water in Cold Bay, some people are against the road. They say at $16 million it will cost too much. It will disturb the refuge where they hunt and fish, and it will not benefit other communities in this borough. They also claim there are other ways people in King Cove can get emergency medical transportation.
The cure for that is to build a harbor facility within Cold Bay.
There's the possibility of improving medical facilities right in the community of King Cove.
I think that if it was invested in like a helicopter unit, an all-weather helicopter that was equipped with an ICU unit, you could benefit the other communities that are around here and not just like King Cove.
The U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife is not taking a position on the road itself, but they have environmental concerns.
All wildlife species are disturbed by human activity, some to differing amounts. Well, birds come to Eisenbeck only for a short period of time, for 30 to 50 days each fall. Now, if birds aren't able to spend virtually all of their waking hours foraging during that 30 to 50 day period, they may well not be able to undertake a 3,000-mile migration, in the case of black brant, to Mexico each fall.
Another bill in Congress would spend $700,000 to study alternatives to the road. King Cove residents like 79-year-old Harry Gould hope they don't take too long. In King Cove, Kirk Chason, Inside Alaska.
Now, Congress is still working through the options on the road issue, whether it's a land swap or money to study other options. Kirk Chason joins us now to help us sort it all out. Kirk?
Well, before we get into the congressional issues, there are a couple other points we ought to take a look at. The Interior Department says the road is not on the state's list of road priorities. The State Transportation Department is studying possible solutions, and they include moving the King Cove Airport to a location that has less wind problems. Also, there has been talk of using the Coast Guard for evacuations, but the Coast Guard has told Senator Frank Murkowski they could not fill that role without a lot more money and a fundamental change in the way they do business. So there are two bills in Congress on this issue. The Senate has passed the land exchange bill, which would be a step towards the road, but that is now in the House, and the president is threatening to veto it. Another bill would spend $700,000 to study ways to solve the problem. Now, either of these could end up in large catch-all bills as Congress is trying to devise a federal operating budget. Hopefully by next week we may have some idea on which way they plan on going with this.
All right, thanks, Kirk.